I uncovered the terrifying truth behind the McGuire Air Force Base incident. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a chill rushed down my spine, like ice running through my veins. The hum of the world outside vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my eardrums. I stood there, heart hammering, staring into the shadows of the dimly lit room. Every day I took a jog by that base, peering through the chain-link fence at the gray, looming buildings. To the untrained eye, it looked like any other military facility. But whispers in the small town spun tales of mysteries hidden within its walls, experiments gone wrong, unnatural sounds at night, and sightings of strange lights flickering in the sky. I laughed at the rumors, until now, the air felt thick, almost electric, as I stepped further inside. My senses screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity clawed at my mind. The darkness felt alive, watching me. The smell of damp concrete filled my nose, mingling with something metallic that set my teeth on edge. I could hear a faint scratching sound, like something skittering just out of sight. My pulse quickened. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed down the corridor, making me jump. I turned, breath hitching, wide eyes darting around. Shadows danced on the walls, shifting as if they had a mind of their own. I felt as if the walls were closing in, pressing me toward the horror I was meant to find, or perhaps meant to avoid. That I could almost hear whispers, low and urgent. They grew louder with each step I took. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch the wall, cool and gritty beneath my fingers. Another noise: thud, 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 like footsteps, but too heavy, too erratic. I felt a sense of dread spilling over me, pooling in my stomach. And then, a door creaked open at the end of the hallway, its hinges screeching in protest. I froze, caught between flight and fascination. What was waiting for me behind that door? I took a cautious step forward, then another. The air grew colder, causing my breath to hitch. The whispers stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. My heart raced. I felt it, a presence. And just as I was about to turn back, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. It stepped into the flickering light, an oppressive figure wrought from the darkness, a silhouette with elongated limbs and an uncanny, featureless face that seemed to absorb the dimness around it. My breath caught in my throat, a bone-deep terror rendering me motionless. It moved slowly, inching toward me, the scratching sound intensifying, now a cacophony of claws on metal, each swipe sending shivers through the air. "Help us," a voice echoed from its mouth, deep, distorted, not quite human. The singular phrase echoed like a death knell, reverberating off the concrete walls, mingling with the dread that clung to the air. The entity tilted its head, as if scrutinizing my every response, every twitch of panic. There was no veil of misunderstanding in that moment. I could feel my mind spinning, clenching tightly around one unshakable truth: this was not the first time this creature had emerged from the bowels of the base. The whispers I'd heard were not mere figments of my imagination. They had belonged to the souls trapped here, the unfortunate remnants of experiments long buried in secrecy. I could almost see them. Hushed cries mingled with the rasping sound of unseen movement, writhing in a dark ballet of madness behind every shadow. In that paralyzing moment, the figure reached out a hand, long fingers curling toward me, as though beckoning me to join it in this twisted dance of despair. The air crackled with a palpable energy, cold and cloying, like the embrace of death itself. I stumbled backward, my heart thunderous and my mind raging against the very roots of fear. Just keep moving, I told myself, though my legs felt like they were encased in concrete. I reignited my flight instinct and turned on my heel, sprinting back down the corridor, past the door that had once seemed so inviting. The wall stretched endlessly, mocking my desperation, and the terrible banging resumed, echoing in pursuit. Each footfall behind me felt malevolent, the presence of shadowy forms gaining ground, closing in on me with stubborn resolve. As I dashed past the threshold of various rooms, I caught fleeting glimpses of the horrors held within. Monitors flickered alive without logic, displaying bewildering codes and unsettling images of turbulent skies streaked with unnatural colors. The faintest sound of whimpering echoed from one of the rooms, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I pressed forward, practically tripping over my own feet, urgency fueling my terror. Then I reached a towering set of double doors marked with bold stenciling, "Authorized personnel only." My hands grasped the cold metal handle, turning it desperately, but it was locked tight. I slammed my palm against the door, panicking as my pulse raced like a wild animal. With every passing moment, I felt the air grow heavier, weighed down by an unmistakable dread. The sounds came closer, a quickened tempo of footsteps creeping nearer, accompanied by that horrific rasping, a choir of the damned gathering for a final performance. I weighed my options as adrenaline coursed through me. I could either stand there, paralyzed by fear, waiting for whatever horror lay behind me, or I could find another way. My eyes darted around, desperately searching for escape. I spotted a small window high on the wall across the room, caged in rusted bars. Without thinking, I launched myself toward it, every instinct hissing at me to run. As I leaped, the doors behind me rattled violently, a glimpse of shadowy figures clawing at the edges. I reached for the sill, fingers scraping against rough edges as I pulled myself up to the window. Just as I heaved my leg through the narrow gap, a piercing shriek erupted from the corridor behind me. The sound cut through everything like glass ripping through flesh, freezing my blood as I turned my head just enough to see a wave of darkness rushing toward me, consuming all light. The loss of air and contact with the outside felt like a cruel joke, as the entity's chilling grip tightened around my heart. I hurled myself into the night just as the darkness lunged, fingers of despair brushing skittishly against my back. I fell into oblivion, landing on the ground outside with a thud that knocked the wind from my lungs, and in that moment, while gasping for breath beneath the stark light of stars, I felt a whisper curl at the nape of my neck, sweet and sinister. "You can't leave." The realization crashed over me as I scrambled to my feet. I was now ensnared, trapped in a cycle of horror from which there was no escape. Behind me, the door to the base creaked open once more, revealing nothing but an inky void, but I knew that the whispers had escaped, and they were not done with me yet. I backed away, dread pooling in my gut, as I felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched from every corner of the darkness, and before I could turn to flee, a figure appeared in the moonlight, pale and spectre-like, muttering sounds that sent chills spiraling down my spine. I took one frantic step back, and the ground beneath me trembled ominously. The creature's presence suffocated the night, its whispers crawling along my skin like 1,000 insect legs. The silhouette swayed, blending seamlessly with shadows cast by ancient trees, becoming more substantial with each heartbeat. My instincts screamed to flee, yet my limbs refused to obey, tangled in a web of horror I had unwittingly spun. "Help us!" it rasped again, the sound skittering into the darkness, wrapping around the spectre that now asserted itself before me. I could discern nothing but its ghastly shimmer against the moonlight, and in that moment, I thought I recognized the faces, gaunt and hollow-eyed remnants of those who had been lost to the depths of the base. In this predator-esque gaze, the echoes of their despair entwined with my own, weaving a rich tapestry of terror that urged me to suffocate beneath its weight. That I dare not breathe, half expecting the dust-laden air to resonate with their torment. The ancient oak roots beneath my feet twisted unnaturally, grasping at me as if urging me to take root, to blend into the earth and forever become one with their suffering. I stumbled, recoiling at the sensation, nudged back into reality by the magnetic pull of survival. Taking a risk, I redirected my frantic gaze towards the tree-line, hoping to catch a glimpse of the escape that remained elusive, but a sound pierced the stillness, a scratching, echoing against all reason. Chilling me to the bone, it was not the rustling of leaves or the scampering of woodland creatures. This was far worse. It was the unmistakable sound of claws against soil, leaving marks along the ground like signatures of fate. "Join us!" the creature leased the words, its distorted voice intertwining hauntingly with the wind. Transfixed and terrified, I felt the distance between us narrowing, the moon's glow giving way to a viscous darkness that seeped through the trees. I tore my gaze away from its rapturous presence, forcing myself to focus. Beyond the thicket, the distant glow of the town twinkled like a beacon of hope, despite the encroaching horrors. Was there relative safety there? Or would I serve merely as the next attraction in this ghastly performance of despair? A jagged breath escaped my lips, igniting a primal urge to fight through this torment. I ran, feet pounding against the uneven terrain, the whispers all too eager to chase after the thuds of my panic. I thrust myself deeper into the woods, branches clawing at my clothes like fingers clamoring to drag me backward. Then, something sharp stabbed through the fabric of my resolve. An ear-piercing scream shattered the air, a human wail that warped from agony to a ghastly echo of madness. I stumbled forward, heart racing, heavier than the retreating shadows that lingered behind me. I veered toward the sound despite the sickness it birthed in my stomach. As I burst into a clearing, what confronted me nearly sent me to my knees. A group of figures, their faces obscured, gathered around a man crouched in the dirt, hands clutching his head as if there lay a cure in this torturous grip. Dread wrapped around me like a shroud as I approached, frantic pulses driving me closer. The figures began to hum, a horrific melody resonating in richness filled with sorrow. Suddenly, their faces blurred into grotesque caricatures, a collage of grief-stricken expressions, all familiar yet alien. A cold sweat dripped down my back as their eyes fixed on me, bright enough to illuminate the night and shatter all pretense of hope. They were the souls I thought lost to the depths, now puppets of despair dancing in the glow of an unseen tormentor. Help him! The thrumming voice of the man seemed to surface from within the cacophony of madness. Please! Before they take him! Before I could comprehend a coherent response, thunder cracked overhead, plunging the clearing into darkness, showered only by the flash of lightning that illuminated the tortured faces. Their mouths gaped wider, teeth glinting like daggers under the fleeting brilliance. I felt hands small, cold, grasping inside my mind, pulling apart. Understanding, gnawing on my resolve, the figures surged forward, no longer tortured, but a hungry pack, while shadows stretched to engulf me in their terrifying embrace. I darted away, terror metamorphosing into blind instinct as I sprinted through the darkness, limbs thrumming with desperate energy. The sound of my heartbeat thumped in tandem with my footsteps, a disconcerting rhythm befitting a funeral march. Just when I thought I lost them, I stumbled into another clearing, but this one encircled a fog-laden pit, the ground pulsating ominously in its depth. I could feel the subtle vibrations, tangible despair rising to greet me, a temptation whispering sweetly into my ear. Somehow, the horror had deepened, rooted in every breath I took. Just then, the man from the clearing emerged from the fog, ethereal and bloodied. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with a frenzy that sparked a chilling familiarity. "Don't look back," he cried, voice harsh and broken. "They will drag you down." "You have to." Before he could finish, the darkness coalesced around him, smothering, lingering with insidious hunger. A shriek erupted from the void as he was ripped into it, and that's when I realized it was my name he had intended to speak. "Run!" With adrenaline bursting through me, I turned to flee, but the shadows rose, clawing for me. My foot slipped on the edge of the pit as arms grasped my ankles. The abyss yawned open beneath me, and as I plunged into the dark, a chorus from the depths sang, a cacophony of lost voices, a lullaby drenched in malevolence. And behind me, the unmistakable sound of laughter began to rise. Falling into the abyss felt like time had lost its meaning, my body suspended in a void where gravity's usual claim disintegrated. Darkness wrapped around my senses, haunting whispers clawing at my thoughts, tempting me into despair. I was unsure if moments or lifetimes passed as I plummeted, but the laughter shrilled louder, piercing through the suffocating shroud. Then, suddenly, with bone-jarring force, I struck ground, numbness snaked through my limbs. I lay still for a heartbeat, drenched in disorientation, my heart hammering like the drums of war. The cold earth beneath me seemed alive, a sinister pulse echoing with trapped suffering. I forced myself to my feet, surveying my surroundings. This new place whispered of dread. All around, walls of thick darkness pulsed like some unearthly heartbeat. I grasped at my memories, piecing together how I'd arrived here, the ghostly figures, the pit, the overwhelming grip of the sinister force. A resurgence of fear tore through me as I recalled the last face I'd seen, bloodied, desperate. As I turned to reassess my options, the laughter transformed, morphing into harsh cackles that ricocheted off the damp walls. I stumbled deeper into this terrifying realm, each step tainted with the fear that the darkness would swallow me whole once more. With every beat of my heart, shadows writhed, twisted into grotesque forms, mirroring the lunacy that spiraled within their depths. "Help us!" The gossamer voices filled the air, syncing with the rhythm of my heartbeat. They were everywhere or nowhere, inviting me into their eternal suffering. I pressed on, knowing with every instinct that succumbing to their haunting pleas would mean my doom. With a sudden whoosh, a figure materialized before me, emerging from the shadows. She was a girl, a mere child with eyes hollowed by terror, her skin slick with critters that wiggled within her pale flesh. "Don't go!" she sobbed, a hand reaching out towards me. "They'll take you too." I froze before her, caught between the unbearable weight of her gaze and the instinctual urge to flee from the horror she embodied. The sound of her misery struck a chord deep within, resonating in the unfilled void that gripped my heart. "Why are you here?" I gasped, battling both compassion and revulsion. "What is this place?" "They play with us," she whimpered, each word strained with heart-wrenching anguish. "We can't leave." "You can't either. They're coming." The air crackled with electricity, and a tremor shook the ground, causing loose soil to rain down around us. My skin prickled, an unseen force began to invade my mind, surging against the boundaries of my sanity, unraveling me like a tightly wound thread. The laughter returned more furious, a cacophony of torment. "Keep running!" the girl cried, her voice turning desperate, echoing in a different pitch, almost monstrous. Shadows broke free from the walls, elongating, surrounding me with a swirling tempest, heart pounding in my chest. I pushed past her, scrambling toward an opening in the suffocating dark, but just as I reached the threshold, a hand clamped around my wrist. It burned like ice, its grip tightening around my soul. I whirled around, frantically clawing at my arm, and there stood her, the girl, now twisted into something almost idol-like in its horror, her mouth stretching in a grotesque grin as her body convulsed in unnatural rapture. "Join us! Join us in our laughter!" I felt my mind slipping as laughter encircled me, dark and intoxicating. For a fleeting moment, I saw those trapped souls, the figures from before, composed of shadow yet as real as the air I struggled to breathe. They extended their hands toward me, pleading, taunting, and I hesitated, caught between the gaping maw of despair and the fire of hope. "And no!" I screamed, clawing against her grip, pulling away with every ounce of strength left within me. "You're not real. You're all just a nightmare." As I extricated myself, despairing for the warmth of the living world, the darkness shrieked. A whirlwind of emotions hurled around me, regret, betrayal, and a quicksilver lust for survival twined, intertwining into a maddening dance that rendered me paralyzed for a brief heartbeat, but I kept moving, tearing at the fabric of this nightmare. Every step broke me free from the jagged remnants of souls torn apart, even as their rage fueled the shadows surrounding me. I burst beyond the threshold into an expansive chamber that opened up before me, a vast, pulsing network of despair encased in darkness, impossibly large and impossibly ancient. Just ahead, I recognized the outlines of machinery, the remnants of old systems once designed to reach for the stars. Chaos unfolded within this macabre sanctuary, wires dangled like serpents, batteries sputtering to life with unnatural energy, each flickering light guiding me deeper into the heart of hell. And then, I heard it, the murmurs of those once lost, their voices rising as a crescendo. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, the sound spinning me in disorientation. My breath caught in unison with theirs, trapped in this contraption, eternally caught between the past and the unseen horrors that ruled this realm. As I took a step forward, the machinery crackled with ominous energy, casting waves of light that revealed ghastly faces pressed against glass, their eyes alive with desperate hope, bodies twisting against the constraints of metal. They reached out, their mouths mutated into silent screams of agony. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, engulfing everything, closing in as the figures screamed louder. I recognized the man now, no longer bloodied but radiating an aura of calm amidst the chaos. He stood, beckoning, lips curling into a knowing, dreadful smile that it was all a trap, and time had run out. Just as I turned to flee, the machinery roared to life, imbuing the darkness with a blinding flash. It beckoned all around me, shattering the boundaries of reality as the laughter joined into a crescendo, and then, before I could comprehend, I felt the floor give way beneath me once more. I was falling into the unknown, surrounded by echoes, laughter echoing in time with my scream as the abyss waited to swallow me whole once more. The sensation of falling was no longer a sudden jolt, it was a slow excruciation, as if the ground beneath me had transformed into mist, allowing my body to drift through an expanse of void. Each second stretched agonizingly, pulling my screams into the dark as whispers danced around me, their intent twisted and gleefully malicious. I clutched at the remnants of my sanity, desperately trying to ground myself in the fleeting hints of reality I could still grasp. The ground beneath me solidified with a violent jolt, slamming me into a forest of shadows that flickered and writhed like living things. I lay there gasping for breath, the taste of iron in my mouth mingling with the bitter tang of dread. The air was thick, suffused with an otherworldly hum resonating deep within my chest. I clenched my teeth, tearing at the shattered remnants of my mind, unwilling to succumb to the madness whispering my name. As I lifted my head, I sensed the presence, a looming shadow just beyond my vision. The trees around me whispered, their trunks gnarled. Branches stretched out like skeletal hands, scraping against the sky. I realized too late that the forest was not merely a figment of the pit, it was alive, breathing with a sinister energy that pulsed in time with my racing heart. "Help us," echoed the voices of the lost, now entwined in the rustling leaves. They were closer, their cry part of the very essence of this realm. "You can save us." It felt like a trap, another snare to lure me deeper into the abyss, but it was accompanied by a dissonance, a note of desperation that curled my insides. Forces at my back urged me onward, softly brushing against me, guiding my trembling footsteps as tears brimmed in my eyes. Hadn't I already chosen to keep running? I stumbled forward, forging through this living nightmare where shadows dripped from the treetops, coalescing into indistinct figures that rippled with anguish. Tendrils of pure darkness lashed out, and I ducked, feeling their presence hover ominously over me. A flicker of pale light shone between the trees, and I instinctively grasped its warmth like a lifeline. Racing towards it, I broke into a clearing, a sudden surge of luminescence counteracting the encroaching shadows. At its center lay an altar, a monolithic structure covered with runes that glowed faintly in the dim light, thrumming with an energy that made my skin crawl. Chains wound around its base, taut like the memories of those who had come before. "Stay away. They're waiting for you," came the chilling voice, shattering my reverie. It was the girl again, her ghostly form emerging from the shadows with an urgency that sent cold chills prickling up my spine. "You don't understand, I need to help them," I shouted, desperation overtaking my reason. "I can't leave them." "You can't help them, they are beyond saving," she shrieked, her face twisting in grief. "You're just a pawn. You must run." The shadows shifted, roiling with fury at my defiance, twisting their way toward me like a mass of storms. The laughter from before rose again, echoing in sinister melodies, blending with the cries of those trapped within the altar like twisted symphonies composed of agony. My hands trembled around the altar's edge as I fought against the force trying to pull me back. The shadows surged closer, their forms sharpening into dread while the runes pulsated like a heartbeat with each breath I took. "Join us," they called, their collective voices blending, wrapping around me like an embrace. "It's time." The chains that restrained the altar rattled, thrumming with palpable energy, resonating with the beat of countless lost souls. The girl's visage flickered as I turned towards the altar, entranced by the visions that danced within its depths. Faces peeked through the obsidian shimmer, eyes wide with terror and hope, silent screams echoing before fading back into the abyss. Heart racing, I reached out, feeling warmth radiate from the symbols etched into the stone. A wave of energy surged through me, almost intoxicating in its promise of escape. I hesitated, torn between the longing to break free from this nightmarish domain and the grim truth that they were waiting, watching, and wanting me to join. Suddenly, the laughter morphed into a hollow roar, shaking the ground beneath my feet. I closed my eyes, feeling the darkness wrap around me, pulling me into its depths, a void that promised both safety and death. Before I could process the blinding light emanating from the altar, whispers erupted into screams. The girl's silhouette solidified one last time, an expression of unearthly sorrow etched onto her features. "Run!" she screamed, her voice drowned out by the chaos. With one final push, a torrent of shadows latched onto my legs, holding me back as I fought against their grip. My heart thundered as the altar erupted in blinding light, illuminating the forest with a deathly gleam. The ground beneath me opened up, echoing with the sound of bones cracking against the earth, just as I felt myself being sucked into the heart of the altar, into the void of what lay beneath, a whisperbed deeper, dark and alluring. "Join us." And then darkness enveloped me, pulling me into its insatiable depths. I was falling again, but sensed a flicker of hope, catching a glimpse of incandescent beam sneaking between the shadows and the promise of escape. The darkness collapsed upon itself, a visceral essence threatening to snuff my very existence, teasingly whispering terrifying secrets of what rested beyond. In that moment, the world fractured, and I knew I had not yet uncovered the full extent of the horror that awaited me. The sacrifice was not merely mine, the shadows would reclaim everything, and I had become their vile muse. The ground shuddered violently beneath me, disrupting the loose soil and roots that clung to the surface as if they were attempting to pull me back above their clutches. Dark laughter echoed in the bone-chilling wind, twisting around me like the gnarled branches that creaked with ancient bitterness. I stumbled, pain lancing through my legs as I was dragged along the shattered remnants of the altar, sinking deeper into its dark heart that pulsated like a malignant beast. "Help us!" The voices beckoned again, morphed into an anguished chorus that filled my ears, throbbing alongside the chaotic rhythm of my own heart. The air trembled with their presence, entangled with my pulse until reality split at the seams. A shard of light flickered somewhere above, an invitation or a warning, I couldn't tell. Heaving, I grasped at the altar, feeling its cold and jagged texture against my fingertips. The shadows writhed as if in anticipation, gleeful and venomous, compelling me to surrender. Help them! I thought in horror, yet an insidious part of me yearned to listen, to submit, to become part of the chorus. Desperation clawed deep within me, urging my legs, still shackled by tendrils, to spring to the light, but the chain-like shadows embraced me, wrapping around my limbs as tendrils slid up my body, piercing through to envelop and suffocate, each inch drawn further against its darkening pull. In the midst of my struggle, my gaze fixed upon the center of the altar, drawn in like a moth to a flame, a swirling funnel of darkness that pulsated in rhythm with those tormented souls. "Join us! Free us!" they cried, their faces emerging from the depths, almost reaching for me as if I could unify our suffering. They were grotesque forms rendered in despair, their eyes hollowed by terror, their mouths wide yet unable to scream. My heart twisted was I seeing remnants of those lost to this realm, absorbed by their own desperate pleas. Above the tumult, the girl's silhouette flickered erratically, swept like a candle in a storm. "You must escape. They want more," she cried, her voice blending into piercing screams. The shadows responded with malicious laughter, a cacophony that resonated through my bones, ringing with the promise of everlasting rest. Caught in a paradox, I was torn, ever grasping toward the starlight glinting beyond the veil of darkness that sought to consume me whole. Yet the darkness whispered secrets just beneath the surface, its breath icy against my skin, weaving tales of wonder and horror in equal measure. What sort of release awaited me should I surrender fully to these wretched souls? Would it be liberation, or damnation? At that moment, a blinding flash erupted from the altar, cascading brilliant light that momentarily banished the shadows like a wave crashing against the shore. The moment washed over me, illuminating the despairing faces hidden within, and casting those surrounding me into stark relief. I could not scream as I caught sight of my own reflection amongst them, my mouth moving silently, echoing a word I couldn't hear, a desperate entreaty of its own. Then a crack sounded, shattering the momentary reprieve, as the altar trembled. Thick tendrils of darkness lashed toward me, plunging into my chest, and I fell back against the smothering shadows wrapping tighter around my throat, hunger in their grasp. "No! Fight!" roared the girl, her fragile form shaking as she clawed at the air. The whispers twisted into a hissing growl, ferocity mounting with each beat of my racing heart. "I'm not theirs to take," I shouted defiantly, voice cracking against the malevolence as shadows coiled around my neck. But their grip was unyielding, their embrace a paradox, warm yet aversive, encouraging yet threatening. With my final breath as an anchor, I focused on the eerie light burning at the core. "Let them go," I pleaded, and even as the shadows dragged me down, I felt moisture pooling behind my eyes. A sudden rage surged through me. I was not another nameless face joining the wailing throng. This would be my time to defy fate, the shadows. Convulsed, recoiling as the power within me resonated and flared in defiance. I tore myself from the fog that sought to engulf and suffocate, plunging my hands into the rift of that swirling void. My grip solidified around the source of light. There was warmth, a strength that washed over me, daring the abyss to consume it. Fingers trembling, I summoned every thought, every memory of joy, laughter, of life itself, and thrust it back into the haunted embrace of the altar. The shadows screamed, a sound more horrifying than human, as they dissolved into a cacophony of shrieks and howls. Just then, a sickening snap rang through the clearing, followed by a bone-chilling silence. The altar trembled as if awakening an ancient slumber and began to crack. I felt a ripping sensation, as though the veil between worlds was tearing, creating a new rift that vibrated with fierce energy. "Away from the light!" the girl screamed, her eyes wide with terror. "You've unleashed something." And then, from the chasm birthed from that fracture, the eyes of the damned blinked open. They glistened within the looming darkness, bearing witness as the shadows poured forth like ravenous beasts. Terror washed over me as I realized they were not merely lost souls, they had come seeking vengeance, and I had unwittingly opened the floodgates. About to call out a warning, the ground trembled more violently, shifting beneath my feet, and a guttural roar erupted from the depths. An unseen force pulled me toward the gaping maw of the altar, threatening to drag me into the consuming darkness. As tendrils snaked back toward me, I felt an overwhelming terror ripple through my bones. I was losing my grasp on reality, and the very breath of existence was slipping away. Just as the shadows surged forward, hungry and relentless, I heard my own voice, a sound I could scarcely comprehend as it fractured the abyss. "Don't let me go." And the light, oh, the brilliance of that moment, the last flickering of hope before the darkness crashed down upon me like a thousand thunderous waves. Desperation clawed at my throat as I teetered on the precipice of oblivion, and instinct kicked in, my limbs flailed wildly, searching for purchase on the crumbling altar. The shadows behind me writhed, their whispers morphing into shrill screams, clamoring for blood, for a soul to seal their bindings. As I stumbled backward, I felt a brief but powerful surge of empathy radiate from the girl's silhouette, and her ethereal voice cut through the cacophony. "Remember who you are. Use it." I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, letting the memories flood my mind, a mosaic of laughter, warmth, and love cascading against the cold dread that anchored itself to my spine. Features of the faces I cherished danced like fireflies, each blink igniting a spark of defiance, one that swirled in opposition to darkness. "Fight!" I roared into the nothingness, my terror transforming into unwavering resolve. Gripping the jagged edges of the altar, I felt the energy pulse through me, and I could almost taste the bitterness of the shadows, a blend of despair and rage threatening to drown me. The eyes emerging from the chasm glared, glistening with a hunger so raw it twisted something deep within me. They were not merely a mass of specters, but distinct souls held in the clutches of a malignant force, writhing in agony and desperation, each a vessel of untold horror, each one bearing a weight of sorrow that radiated like dark energy. Then came the sound, the bone-chilling crack of thunder resonated from within the altar, pulling my attention. The light fluttered, ebbing as the darkness intensified, swirling around me with insatiable greed. Shadows reached out, tendrils brushing against my skin, and an icy sensation flooded through me as they fought my hold. "Surrender," they hissed, every word a shivering caress as their whispers clung to my mind like cobwebs. "Become one of us." "No!" I roared, forcing the strength of my memories into the space around me. "I refuse to join you." The pain blossomed in my voice, a cry of absolute defiance, rising like a tempest. As if in response, the air thickened with desperation, penetrating my senses. Anguish wrapped around me like a shroud as I struggled against the growing pull. The girl's cry was a beacon, the hearts bound in darkness echo your pain. Release them. The moment of connection surged within me like a tidal wave, and as I focused, desperation transformed to clarity. I envisioned the spirits, twisted and lost, searching endlessly for a fragment of their lives, a chance to break the chains that held them hostage. And with that thought, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, channeling my will into a singular intent. "Let your pain go. I release you." The shadows recoiled as cosmic energy surged forward, emitting a radiant pulse that erupted from my core, illuminating the darkness with blistering light. The temple shuddered, the very ground beneath me rumbling as a barrier began to split within the altar, revealing an endless abyss. But in that moment, the howls of the damned turned frenzied, and the void opened even wider, a chasm of primal despair, threatening to swallow everything whole. The ghastly faces writhed and turned toward me, mouths gaping in unison to summon a dreadful chorus. Just when clarity seemed to prevail, an overwhelming surge of bitterness surged through the throng. One figure stepped forth, cloaked in a storm of shadows, its presence more suffocating than the rest. The malevolence emanating from it was palpable, urging the spirits to awaken to their worst instincts. It raised a skeletal hand, and the very foundation of the altar trembled in fear. "Foolish child," it barked, its voice a twisted echo that crackled with menace. "You think you can unbind them by speaking their names? Your light will extinguish, and only the hungry shall remain." As shadows lunged toward me like weapons forged from nightmares, I felt the ground crack again, creating a chasm that threatened to inch closer to my trembling legs. The howling treaties of the souls entwined with warning, and yet they were glimmers of hope, a pool of flickering light, urging me on. The horror unfolded around me, enveloping me in a tempest of emotions as I fumbled for my heart, wielding every spark of memories I had. I had to break free. But as the consuming darkness licked at my heels, ready to pull me under, a stifled scream echoed, one that wasn't my own. With eyes wide in horror, I turned to see the girl, her form fading as the shadows coiled around her once more, dragging her toward the altar's dark heart. "No!" My cry tore from me, laced with the weight of despair. The darkness grinned, its voices merging into one chilling sentiment. "A sacrifice is demanded. The light will either drown, or you shall lose her." The altar trembled one last time as it split open wider, revealing a yawning void that promised no escape. My heart racing, the seconds stretched, tainted by a desperate choice: the life of an innocent girl beyond the shadows, or a chance to bind the anguish clawing at my core. A flicker of realization ignited inside me. I had only one choice left. New shadows emanated from the abyss, coiling around my throat, strangling hope as I understood. I would either bind my own fate with the darkness or face the terrifying unknown. One final breath echoed within me, "Let her go." But the darkness surged forward, hungry to consume all that I was, threatening to snuff out the last glimmer of my own defiance, and that's when I felt it, a cold hand clutching my wrist. The grip was unyielding, a stark contrast to the fear that coursed through me like a venomous river. A chill seeped into my bones as I turned my head slowly, almost against my will. I braced myself for the worst. The shadows thickened, shrouding everything around me in a blanket of despair, but from the depths emerged a form, ethereal yet horrifyingly familiar. The girl's face was twisted in agony, her once gentle features now marred by an unsettling grin. "You should have let them drown," she hissed, her voice a symphony of anguish and mirth. The shadows writhed around her, feeding off her pain, igniting the darkness that draped over the altar like a funeral shroud. "Please," I choked, my voice trembling as each syllable drew closer to a sob. "Fight them. I can help you." Her laughter echoed, warped by the twisted abyss that gripped her. "Help? There's no help left for me, not when the price has already been paid. You're too late." In an instant, my heart sank into the depths of despair that clamored beneath me. The girl, once a flickering beacon, had become a vessel of the very darkness I fought against. It wrapped around her like a casket, twisting her essence into something unrecognizable. The altar began to pulsate, blood-like energy surging through its cracks, as shadows danced in anticipation of their next feast. I stumbled backward as the crack underfoot widened, a painful rift growing, hinting at the unquantifiable horrors lurking below. "No! I won't let you take her!" I shouted, the words tearing at my throat. But the shadows were relentless, reflecting my mounting dread, a tempest fueled by desperation and dark delights. The voices of the souls echoed like a deranged symphony, each note a warning or beckoning, mingling with the jester's laughter that came from the very core of the altar. I had to force them back, to find the kernel of light buried beneath the darkness. "You carried hope once. Fight back," I implored, wrapping my fingers around a shard from the altar, weighty, warm, and alarming. It felt alive, pulsing in rebellion against the encroaching dark. Suddenly, the altar exploded in a shower of light and shadow, a convergence that sent shockwaves through the air. The passion ignited inside me as I hurled the shard into the chasm, a cascade of energy erupting from the impact. The screams intensified, a maelstrom of agony and rage crashing against my soul. "Don't do that!" The girl screamed, her form flickering with the instability of her existence. "You will condemn us all. You don't understand the price." And then it hit me, the realization that whatever tethered her to this cursed fate was rooted in the same anguish that afflicted the souls I wanted to free. The altar was not only a prison but a nexus of fragmented desires and memories. "I understand," I cried, fumbling for the core of her despair, straining to reclaim the light buried within. "You are not just a shadow. You are a survivor. You are more than this." I forced the words through the tightening grip of dread as the cold shadows sombered around us, threatening to eclipse all. Her laughter turned to a wail, and the shadows trembled, recoiling from my defiance. "You dare question the sacrifice? This is the price of your resolve." As I shouted her name, the very foundation of the altar began to crack open wider, the overwhelming presence of the abyss yawning with hungry triumph. The dark figure loomed closer, its skeletal hand ready to deliver a final blow of despair. "You will join her, or you will lose everything." Just as I stood there, trembling, wrestling with my choice, my eyes caught a glimpse of movement beyond the emerging shadows. Another soul, a man, trapped within the edge of the void, thrashed about desperately, his face a mask of agony, eyes wide and pleading. "Help! Help us!" he screamed, and a sudden flash of familiarity seized me. The faces of those I loved, crying for release from the eternal nightmare, began to swell in my mind. With a surge of energy, an unyielding force ignited within me, morphing the fear into unbreakable resolve. I had paid the price of horror and despair, and I wasn't about to abandon them now. But in that very moment, a shrill shriek pierced the air, followed by silence so profound it choked me. The chilling realization burst forth as the shadows merged into a singular entity, a vortex of sorrow and hunger clawing toward me, promising oblivion. "One must be claimed for the darkness," it growled, a gaping maw looming before me, where tangible life flickered just beyond the threshold. My instincts screamed at me, "Choose. Choose now." But as I felt the air siphon from my lungs, I knew instinctually that whatever fate lay at the end of that abyss would demand a sacrifice more harrowing than just my own, and suddenly, the girl's face flashed before me, her eyes swimming with despair yet glimmering with something I hadn't realized until now, a plea for liberation, or perhaps an unreconciled fear of the fate awaiting her. And at that moment, I locked onto her shimmering essence amidst the churning chaos, igniting something primal within me, the desperate, visceral urge to unravel the truth. All around me spiraled the remnants of hope, fear, and the darkness converging in the heart of the altar, daring me to either face my own demise or lose the last flicker of light I had left, but the final choice was at hand. The tether tightened around us both, and the echo of a single voice rang through the howling shadows. "You'll have to face the truth, either I perish, or you become a part of the never-ending nightmare." With a horrifying resolve building inside, the shadows lunged forward. The ground trembled violently beneath me, thrumming with a dark life of its own. I stumbled back, caught between instinctual survival and a yearning to save both the girl and the terrified man trapped in the void, calling out for help. Every heartbeat resonated with a sinister drum, drowning out the frantic whispers swirling around me. Shadows curled and pulsed, taunting me with glimpses of lost souls, their faces twisted in eternal torment. "Make your choice." The voice roared, carrying an echo of something ancient and sinister, vibrating through the chasm. My vision was filled with flickers of moments, trapped memories of laughter now coated in sorrow, faces I longed to see again but knew I could only condemn further. The girl's mournful eyes searched mine, desperation mingling with hope. "Please, I can feel their pain. It's all-consuming. You don't have to save me, save them." Her form flickered with each word, as if the very air around her strove to snuff out her essence. "No!" I yelled, breath catching in my throat. A surge of defiance coursed through me, compelling me to resist the tide of horror threatening to sweep us all away. I grasped the shard from the altar tighter, its warmth a pulse against the icy despair, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. With every ounce of strength, I focused on the man's tortured face, his hopeless struggle against the shadows and the grotesque thirst of the altar. "I want to let them have you," I shouted, my voice a fragile beacon amidst the chaos. The girl's form flickered dangerously, weakening. "You must understand. They need you to let them go, or they'll drag you down with them." That name, McGuire Air Force Base, echoed in my mind, a jarring symbol of twisted experiments and haunted pasts. The entity I had encountered had thrived in the dread and pain of these forgotten souls. It predated them, fed on their anguish. A realization struck hard. The darkness was a product of the base's secrets, feeding off the despair left behind, a monstrous remnant of unaccounted sins. "Let me in," the girl shrieked, her voice rising through the din of despair, golden tears falling from her eyes, each drop an echo of hope crashing against despair. "I'll guide you. I'll help you break the curse." As she spoke, the shadows slithered closer, a writhing mass of sorrow and terror. I felt their pull, their whispered promises of oblivion luring me into their cold embrace. It was intoxicating, threatening to drown out my resolve. Closing my eyes didn't shield me from the grasp of dread that seemed to burrow deeper into my psyche, merging with my own fears, my own losses. They hissed in symphony, the lost souls pleading desperately for salvation. The layer between reality and nightmare began to fracture, visions of my loved ones merging with the tortured cries of the damned, searing hot memories mixing with vivid terrors. Suddenly, with a jolt, my eyes flew open. I needed to embrace the truth, to anchor myself against the darkness. "I know you're all trapped, let me help you," I cried, eyes scanning the haunting landscape of despair around me. "But you must trust me. You must show me the way." But before I could finish, the air around me shifted, a suffocating weight coiling tighter around my heart. I felt something clawing at the edges of my very essence, a sinister force eager to break me from the inside. Grotesque figures emerged from the shadows, fragments of those lost to this dread, their shrieks a maddening cacophony that vibrated through my bones. "Choose." The entity howled again, its voice a plastered grin of ravenous anticipation. With a flick of its spectral fingers, one of the figures lunged toward me, a boy, his mouth a silent scream, stretching toward me. I could feel his sorrow, his pain, an echo of innocence stripped away by a malevolent force, one that saw hope only as another opportunity for domination. "Mom!" he cried, reaching, fingers grasping for something lost. The darkness licked hungrily at his form, pulling him toward the edge once more. My heart shattered, the agony of abandoning him slicing deeper than any blade. I had to act. Give us your light. The entity screamed, and suddenly, the world spun a whirlwind of shadow and grief threatening to drag me into an endless night. The faces of my loved ones flickered like a tape loop trapped in hell, reminding me that surrender would condemn them to this fate too. I won't let you take anyone. I roared, fear now a cornered beast, and every ounce of power within surged to respond. But the shadows lunged again, the howling crescendo of anguish consuming my resolve, their sharp whispers clawing at my mind as the altar quaked beneath me. One of you must join. Suddenly the ground split wide, an unholy chasm opening beneath me, the air slashed with shrieks of impending despair. The girl's face flickered before me, caught between worlds, an oasis of light begging for release. Then it dawned on me as a damning truth, perhaps the real weight to bear was the knowledge that to save anyone, I might need to sacrifice everything I had left to save someone from this festering nightmare. But as the shadows converged, eager to claim their prey, a cruel realization awaited me just beyond the darkness, lurking like the predator it had become. Are you willing to sacrifice it all? The last flicker of her face shimmered like a candle drowning in an ocean of despair, and then the abyss roared. In that instant, I looked down, and the girl reached toward me just as the shadows tangled around my ankle. My heart raced. I had mere seconds left to decide or be swallowed by the darkness forever. I chose, but silence plunged its icy fingers around my throat, and as I teetered at the edge of reality, the burgeoning mass of shadows leaned in, their hungry whispers drowning out my thoughts, promising oblivion. A fate worse than death awaited just beyond the veil. And it became painfully clear, my choice might not be my own after all. The light that seemed so close flickered out as I plunged into the depths of darkness. An electric cold enveloped me, a chilling reminder of the horrors surrounding the McGuire Air Force Base, now so ingrained in my mind. I was not merely a victim, I was a piece on the board of a malevolent game, and the rules had twisted into something grotesquely unfathomable. That I stood in the abyss, the shadows swirling to form a sea of tormented souls, their voices echoing in unison, help us, join us. Each plea tugged at my heart, a symphony of despair singing from the depths of their suffering. They were vibrant in sorrow, tales of their lives flickering in the darkness, yet none could drown out the chilling laughter of the entity that had claimed them. It loomed above, its silhouette a blend of despair and grotesque elation, feeding off the tumult it elicited. Choose. It demanded, its voice a distorted echo that turned my very essence inside out. The wails of lost lives melded into the fabric of the void around me, and suddenly, the silhouettes began to take form, faces emerging from the shadows, voices I recognized from both nightmares and nostalgia. Among them, I saw her, the girl. In her gaze, something had changed, a flicker of compassion slicing through her spectral form. You must save them, she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the tide of grief. Let go of your fears. Only by embracing the light can we break this curse. I felt the weight of her plea press upon me, and the heartache became unbearable. But what if? I began to question, but fear twisted my thoughts, gnawing at my sanity. What if I did embrace the light, only to succumb to their darkness? The shadows surged, and trapped within them were faces I recognized, my family, my friends, all the people I loved. Each one bore the weight of their own agony, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes wide with helplessness. They need you. The girl urged, reaching toward me, her own form edging closer to the void, as if the depths of that darkness could claim her once more. In that moment, clarity washed over me. I understood the price of letting go, the irrevocable cost. I would have to confront not only the darkness within this realm but the darkness that had seeped into my own soul. It was a choice between my suffering or the damning of others who had become entwined in this malignant web. That I stepped forward, heart pounding like a drum of war as I faced the entity lurking behind the swarm of shadows. I will not join you, I declared, my voice steady despite the tremor of my limbs. I will set them free. With that declaration, the altar of despair trembled beneath our feet. The shadows pulsed as if they were somehow alive, hungry for my surrender, but I stood firm. I drew on every ounce of love I had ever felt, every cherished moment I had taken for granted. You will not claim me or any of them. I shouted, and the light began to swell in my heart, a warmth igniting as I channeled my energy toward the souls reaching out for salvation. That I closed my eyes, feeling the light within me burst forth, shattering the claustrophobic darkness that sought to devour me whole. As I opened my eyes again, the shadows writhed painfully, shrieking in tandem with waves of bright light that surged forth, illuminating the midnight that surrounded me. In that moment, I felt them, the souls tethered through pain, and I reached out, desperately grasping for them. Feel the light, hold on to it. I cried, pouring my essence into their beings, hoping they could see me, feel me. I envisioned their release, our connection transcending this realm, igniting with energy that transcended suffering and despair. Then it happened. A blinding cascade of light erupted, piercing through the layer of destruction that had clouded us all. It cut through the heavy air, and with it came silence, a stillness that descended like a breath of fresh air. But as the brilliance enveloped the abyss, I felt something shift. A dark presence pushed back against the light, a roiling tempest threatening everything I clung to. The girl's voice rose through the din, calling my name, but her form wavered as if struggling against an unseen force. I reached for her, desperate, afraid that in reclaiming her, I would lose the others that loomed in the shadows. Join us! A collective voice screamed, an avalanche of despair cascading from the shadows, clawing at my resolve. You cannot escape the pact you made. Terrifying laughter joined the rising chaos. It was the unmistakable sound of mocking, of a truth too horrifying to comprehend. That I hesitated, the weight of my decision gnawing at me like an insatiable beast. I realized then that the horror I had unleashed wasn't just a consequence of my curiosity. It was rooted in my very essence, in the choices I made every day, in the darkness I sometimes harbored. To save them, I had to accept the shadows that lurked within me, face them, and ultimately let them go. With newfound ferocity, I focused on the warmth glowing in my center. You will not take me! I yelled defiantly, and with that, I surged into the heart of the brightness. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as I propelled the energy outward, breaking the chains binding them in place. The girl cried out, "No! You'll be lost with them." But in that moment, clarity poured over me. Then let them claim me, I hollered, feeling the light dance around me like flames licking at my soul. If I were to be damned, I would embrace it. If I was to become a part of the darkness to save them, then I owed it to them all. I thrust my heart against the looming shadow, piercing through their terror, forcing the light to cascade through the cracks in the abyss. Find your strength and be free! I bellowed, as the warmth surged and the darkness howled. I flung open my arms, welcoming the shadows and the brilliance, letting myself dissolve into a state of acceptance. But then came the chilling realization, a crippling bolt of dread as the shadows pulled me in, breathless and spiraling, as I was consumed not by darkness but by an understanding deeper than the void. I was not alone anymore. I became their vessel, transforming the horror into something radiant. And then the laughter stopped, moments of bliss washed over me, light engulfing the last remnants of despair, a brilliant rebirth coursing through the darkness that had consumed so much lost hope. I was free, and so were they, and amid the turmoil, a haunting realization lingered, shaking the very core of my being. The price of sacrifice is often not paid in the presence of light, but in the echoes left behind. As light swallowed all shadows whole, I heard his voice softly beckoning through the silence. You can never truly leave. And though freed from darkness, a chill unfurled through my veins, a shadowy whisper luring me back to the depths, hinting at the inevitable truth buried within my mind, never to let me forget, always echoing the horror left behind.